The comma is so familiar today that we rarely stop to ask where it came from, yet its story begins long before modern punctuation rules existed. In the earliest written texts, there were no commas, no periods, no question marks. Ancient Greek and Latin manuscripts were written in scriptio continua, meaning words were written continuously without spaces or pauses. Reading was a slow and difficult task, and only trained readers could make sense of the text by knowing where to breathe or pause. As reading gradually shifted from being a spoken public activity to a silent private one, the need for visual guides became obvious. Readers needed signals on the page to understand rhythm, meaning, and structure. This is where the idea of punctuation began to form. One of the earliest systems was developed around the 3rd century BCE by Aristophanes of Byzantium, a scholar working in the Library of Alexandria. He introduced marks to indicate pauses of different lengths during oral reading. These marks were not commas as we know them today, but they planted the idea that written language could guide speech. The ancestor of the comma comes from the Greek word koma, meaning a piece cut off or a short clause. In ancient rhetoric, a comma referred not to a symbol but to a unit of speech, a small segment of a sentence that made sense on its own. Over time, scribes began to experiment with marks that could represent these spoken divisions visually. Early versions of the comma looked nothing like the curved mark we use today. They were often simple dots placed at different heights on the line. During the Roman period, punctuation remained inconsistent. Some texts used dots, others used slashes or spaces. The purpose was still largely rhetorical, meant to help speakers read aloud with proper pauses and emphasis. Meaning came second to breath and rhythm. After the fall of the Roman Empire, literacy declined in Europe, but monasteries preserved written language. Medieval monks copying sacred texts played a huge role in shaping punctuation. To avoid misreading sacred texts, they introduced more spacing between words and began using pause marks more systematically. By the Middle Ages, a symbol resembling the modern comma started to appear. It evolved from a diagonal slash used by scribes to indicate a brief pause. Over time, that slash shortened and curved, slowly turning into the comma shape we recognize. Still, there were no fixed rules. A comma might appear where one scribe felt a pause was needed, and another scribe might place it somewhere entirely different. The real turning point came with the invention of the printing press in the 15th century. Printing demanded consistency. Printers needed standard symbols that could be reproduced reliably across thousands of copies. Aldus Manutius, an influential Venetian printer, played a major role in standardizing punctuation. He helped popularize the comma as a distinct curved mark placed on the baseline of text. From this point onward, the comma was no longer just a reader's aid, it became a grammatical tool. As languages evolved, especially English, the role of the comma shifted. Instead of marking where to breathe, it began to mark how ideas relate to one another. Commas were used to separate items in a list, to set off descriptive clauses, and to clarify meaning within complex sentences. Grammar rules slowly formed around these uses, especially during the 18th century when grammarians tried to codify English into a logical system. Even then, comma usage was debated. Some writers favored heavy punctuation, filling sentences with commas to control rhythm and flow. Others preferred a lighter touch. This disagreement continues today. British and American English, for example, differ in some comma conventions, such as the use of the Oxford comma. Yet, despite these variations, the core purpose remains the same: to guide understanding. What makes the comma especially powerful is how much meaning it can change with such a small mark. A single comma can alter intent, tone, or even legal interpretation. Famous examples show how adding or removing a comma can change the entire meaning of a sentence. This power is a direct result of its long evolution from a pause in speech to a marker of logic in writing. Today, we use commas almost instinctively. In texts, emails, contracts, and books, the comma silently organizes our thoughts. Most people never think about its origin, yet it represents centuries of experimentation, debate, and adaptation. From ancient Greek rhetoric to medieval monasteries, from printing presses to modern keyboards, the comma has survived by constantly redefining its role. So, the next time you pause briefly while reading a sentence guided by that small curved mark, remember that it began as a simple idea, helping the reader breathe. Over time, it became something far more precise, shaping meaning itself, one tiny pause at a time.